All right, welcome back to another NovNov project video. 1 second for copy. Like we mentioned yesterday, today we're going to be picking up in our Kali Linux virtual machine. Sorry, our definitely not Kali Linux virtual machine. And we're going to go over one of the most popular or common tools used by everyone from hobbyists, DIY hackers, network security professionals, actual like script kiddies, throw it in there. There's a lot of people who use this. It's called Nmap. We'll just get right into it. I am tired on a Saturday. My dog woke me up this morning by jumping on my stomach and then licking my face until I got out of bed to take care of her. So that's what the coffee's for, though, right? So I'm logged into my Esbern account on my Kali Linux virtual machine, and just to make sure, you always got to make sure you have an internet connection and the DNS is working fine so that you can do the other cool stuff. Brief disclaimer, you should not be using any tools like Nmap or Burp Suite if we get into like the fancier ones at any point against resources that you don't have explicit authorization to use them on. There's a lot of gray area that people talk about, but one thing you can remember is that generally the US considers hacking to be unauthorized access to computers, computer systems, computer networks, or data. So if you accidentally poke the wrong thing, you could end up in trouble. And also, it's just generally bad form to touch other people's stuff without explicit authorization, right? Consent is key, even in cybersecurity. So let's go ahead and get into it. The tool that we're going to be using is Nmap. It does have a man page here in Kali Linux that you can go ahead and read through. Technically, it stands for Network Mapper, but I've never heard anyone call it that out loud outside of a classroom or a test. And it really has a ton of information in here, a ton of different ways you can use it, a lot of examples that you could go through, but that's a lot of reading, right? And this is NovNov. We're not here to read a bunch, so I'm just going to point at a resource really quick. I'm going to wait for my Firefox to open up. And then we are going to go to scanme.nmap.org. Yes, that is the real website. It is made available by It's made available by the folks that make Nmap available. We've got a nice little note from Fyodor here to say that this is used to learn about Nmap and also to test and make sure that Nmap is working. You can scan this machine with Nmap or other port scanners, but don't hammer it. A few scans is fine, but do not scan 100 times a day or use this site to test your SSH brute force password cracking tool. Hearing a lot of people talking about how reading comprehension is so important in the IT industry. I'll link to a thing on that probably. But with this is a great example of how to apply reading comprehension as you get into the realm of whether it's just playing around on the internet, cybersecurity, ethical hacking, whatever you want to do. You are authorized to scan this machine with Nmap and other port scanners. A few scans a day is fine, but, and this is where the restrictions come in, right? Don't scan 100 times a day or use this site to test your SSH brute force password cracking tool. So it's saying three things here. One, we can use this. Two, don't use it too much. It's a community resource. Other people are also using this and need this resource to learn, not just you. Sharing is caring. And then three, this is not for testing other tools. This is only for Nmap and port scanners. So please don't. If you like learning about tools like Metasploit or Legion or any of those other guys that we could get into, do not use them against this. Just use Nmap, right? So, I mean, technically you use ZenMap. ZenMap, if you guys haven't heard of it, I'll do, let's see if I have it. I don't know if I do. Yeah, it's just a graphical front end for Nmap. So if you like a GUI instead of a CLI, you could use ZenMap. I'm not the biggest fan. I don't like the user interface. So I'd rather work with the data from Nmap directly. Simplest use of Nmap is just Nmap and then your target. Right. And this is going to take a second for some of you because it's literally reaching out over the internet to scan a thing. And this highlights exactly the three or two of the three things that Nmap does really well. First, it is going to check and see if the host is up, right? So it's checking for availability or accessibility. Then it's going to scan for open ports. Specifically, it scans 1,000 common ports by default. We can change that to see what else is going on. And then it returns anything that is open or specifically asked about. So in this case, we've got port 80, which is our HTTP. I mentioned specifically asked about, so before I tangent, if you use the -p, you can specify a port or a cluster of ports or a range of ports. And if you specify specific ports like 80 and 443, it's a quicker scan, right? So a faster scan comes from asking only for what you need. Nmap sends like 1,000 packets by default if you just run this here. It sends much less if you restrict it to just what you need. So Nmap is a very basic tool. All it does by default is check and see if a host is live, check and see what ports are available, and there are some ways to change that. So if we were to do Nmap, lowercase s, capital V for service versioning, this is going to reach out and it's going to check and see what ports are live, but then it's going to add a little bit more, that SV for service versioning. That's not what it actually stands for, but it helps me remember it because it adds this bit here. And when you are working in your own lab environments, when you have the authorization to use other tools, this bit here is really helpful. That's how you can find what vulnerabilities exist based on just a simple network scan. So, got a ton of parameters in here that we can change how it works. But like, not that many that we really need to look at or hop into. You can do everything from like firewall bypass, IDS-IPS evasion, host or target spoofing and redirection. There's a ton of stuff you can do in Nmap, but those three things are always going to be my key for when you're learning and getting started. Host availability or host identification, port scanning, and service versioning. And why I say host identification is because let's just take a really quick look. Instead of using a fully qualified domain name, let's use a whole network. So I am currently on this 10.0.2.15/24 network. And if I were to do an Nmap at that network, right? If I type it correctly, /24. And then there is a parameter for just checking if it's alive. I think it's -n, so I'll check that. And what this will do, if it is -n, is it's just going to check and see what of these 254 usable IP addresses are live. And so we get this back. We see that we've got the 10.0.2.2, the 10.0.2.3, and the 10.0.2.15. So I've got two other hosts on my network that I could take a look at or try and figure out more information about. But this is where your documentation comes in handy, whether you're using physical docs or logical docs, virtual software. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. Always take note of the things as you're going, especially just little quick notes to come back to. Highly recommend Daniel Lowry's series on note taking. I will definitely link that. I'm going to make a note to link that on my physical notepad because I like the way he talks about taking notes and documentation to apply it to your labs. But in here, we can go and we can say hosts. We have 10.0.2.15, 10.0.2.3, and 10.0.2.2. We can then identify that this is Kali, this is unknown, and this is unknown, right? So in that, let's go ahead and take a look at one of these a little bit closer and try and figure out what it is. So I'm going to clear my screen and I'm going to this time do a sudo Nmap. So sudo elevates it to root, and you need root privileges to look at the packet or frame information when you're working with Nmap. So let's go ahead and take a look at that last one first. And I am going to specifically do a SS or a SYN scan for super sneaky. It abuses the TCP handshake to try and trick them into giving you more information. Not always necessary, but it can reveal some extra stuff. Can also take a little bit longer. So I'm going to drink some coffee while that goes. Oh, dang it. I didn't even get my coffee in. So, not a whole lot of new information, but we can build out our docs. We know ports open are 135 and 445. On 135, we're running MSRPC, and on 445, we are running Microsoft -DS. Now, this is a part where some of you might be like, "Oh, I know exactly what that is. I know exactly what 445 is. I know what it does. I know how to use it." But that's not everybody, right? Everybody comes from a different place in their journey when it comes to compute stuff. So definitely try and have a little bit of grace or understanding on that in general. Not going to tangent into that any further. But 445 is a really common port. So instead of just giving it to you guys, I'm just gonna pull up the internet and be like, what is port 445 Microsoft DS sued for, used for? And we're going to get a lot in here. AI overview, I'm going to skip it. Yes, it could just give you the answer, but I liked reading more. So, CBT Nuggets, very common training site. Microsoft Learn, also good. Varonis is a security firm at a very high level. I used to know some people that work there, and they don't work there anymore, so I don't know how I feel about them anymore. But they give you some information about it. Let's check what our other port was. 135. Okay, I was gonna say if that's 139, that would be crazy. But no, 445 tied to something called SMB. So let's go ahead and add that in here. And we can just take a look at this article really quick. How does it work? I don't really care. What does it do? What are ports 139 and 445? So port 445, later versions of SMB after Windows 2000 began using port 445 on top of the TCP stack. So it allows using TCP over the internet or SMB over the internet. How do we secure it? I don't really care about that right now. But this is just going to be file sharing. If you've ever used a shared folder or a network drive at work, it could have been using port 445. I'm gonna leave that open so I can throw that link into the description with more information. But let's go ahead and see if we can get more information. So now let's do sudo nmap 10022 key 445 SV. Tag all of those things together. So maybe we can add our service version. I'm gonna change up my delimiters here for a second. And the version is question mark, right? So it didn't give me anything. It is open though. So this is where you can get into other tools. One thing you could look at is you could go back to the internet. You could figure out what other tools can be used. I know of one, so I'm going to throw that one in here. SMB client. SMB client is a way to create FTP-like client to access SMB or SIFS resources on servers. It's part of the Samba suite. And basically all you need is the command and the name. And you could require some authentication information. But what if we just go ahead and try a very common one that it showed on there of L for list? And then the syntax, I can't remember if it's just the IP address or if you have to do the network path or UNC path. Let's go ahead and try that first. Connection failed, status timed out. Okay, so there is something there. The port is open, but not able to actually catch or see anything. on my very basic attempt. There could be more we do with this. DO connect, connection to failed, error, NT status timeout. That is a hint as to what you would want to do next. But I digress. Let's go back. We have another host. We have more information we need to get. So now we have Nmap 10.0.2.3. And this time, let's go ahead and just do an all scan. So this is going to give us everything. I do this later because this is not great for uh, if you're trying to not create a bunch of traffic, but it is great if you're trying to get everything all at once. It can also take longer, right? Remember, I said that the more restrictive you are, the quicker and better it can be. The less restrictive you are, the slower it will go. So a hyphen A gives me all, but it's going to take all the time in the world. If you're ever curious on how long it's taking, you can go ahead and hit the space bar as you go through here. And it just so happened to kill right or finish right when I did that. But it would have shown you this, right? It'll tell you what it's doing, how close it is to being done, and what's going on. So my 10.0.2.3, let's go ahead and take our notes in the same way. We've got ports open. Well, really just port, but you know, in this case, it is 53, which if you guys don't know, that is DNS. It also does say domain or for the domain name service. And here we've got a generic DNS response serve fail. Fingerprint strings, DNS bind TCP version bind did not require returning data. So much stuff, right? That's not great. This here means that there is DNS, but we don't really recognize what's going on. Much like our SMB, we've got question marks. We don't have all the information right now. But if we go ahead and hit further down on this, we can see its MAC address. So I could copy that out, throw that in my documentation. OS scan results may be unreliable. It thinks it is a VoIP adapter, general purpose bridge, or printer. Just guessing. It's either AT&T embedded, QEMU, Oracle VirtualBox. That's what it actually is, but it's a lower percentage than some other things because it is just guessing. Aggressive OS guesses. It might be a gateway. It might be the Slurp NAT bridge, which is what it is. This is what lets us talk through VirtualBox. It's not a real host in the way that you guys might have been thinking. But there's no exact matches, and I don't have a name or anything for it in this. So even though I did all, I didn't get all. There are more things you can find. But that is our intro to it. Tomorrow we will come back in and I'll probably push towards a lab on VirtualBox instead of the internet. But as a reminder, we've got some resources. If you want to get better at this, don't just searching scan me. Hey, Google's smart sometimes. We've got the scanme.nmap.org that you could use. So many tabs open now because I clicked the wrong thing. Anyway, we've got the scanme.nmap.org. You can use this as a target, but also this goes out to the Nmap documentation, right? So the reference guide as well as docs and walkthroughs. And then if you're more curious about what SMB is, that port 445, Varonis has got a decent article on it. But that is all I have for you guys for today's NovNov. I'll see you guys back tomorrow. Okay, bye.